We are in the middle of an initiative to utilize alternative financing and alternative funding in order to allow us to transform our school system within a 10-year period. We think that the current level of funding that we receive is just not sufficient. It would take us 50 years to get to a point where we think we've improved all of our buildings. And then, of course, now you have to start all over again because a lot of buildings still have work that's 30 to 40 years old. We have the oldest buildings in the state. Our oldest school currently in use is Booker T. Washington, built in 1895. 80% of our building stock was built before 1970. So if you look at our buildings starting with 1895 and then the next schools in 1910, every decade it's 20 to 25 schools that were built up until 1970, and then there was like a cliff, and it's like one every 2 years. We just broke ground for the Waverly School. Where's Mary Pat?
Yes.
I got to give a shout out to Mary Pat and Councilwoman Mary Pat Clark, because when I came to the school system in 2006, and I went to a meeting and was ambushed about a promise that had been made 2 years before.
And we had the video.
And so it was one of my objectives to get that school approved, and through a lot of battles, through help from people like Robin Allen, who at that time was working for the state, and so I had to steal her to get her to help us to get Waverly through. And hard work from Larry Flynn, who's not here, he's our Director of Design and Construction. But it's the first new school built in Baltimore, completely new school built in Baltimore since 1998. So that'll let you know what kind of drop has existed in Baltimore City with respect to building new schools. But our effort is to build modern schools at an optimal level. We are not looking at building schools as cheaply as possible as was done in the 70s. You'll see a lot of our schools, no windows, the windows are sealed. They're like many prisons. We're getting away from that, and just with a couple of schools that we have done, Dunbar, Violetville, the new Leaf Walk School that we're doing an addition and a renovation. Absolutely gorgeous, lots of windows, light coming in, courtyards, things that never existed in Baltimore City schools, and we're trying to make those improvements. All of our buildings will now be a minimum LEED silver, minimum. So we're looking at ways to improve our buildings. We're very, very interested in going green as much as possible. But we need to get a few initiatives through. We are going in our second year and trying to convince the state legislature to allow us to change the method of funding that we receive. We currently get our funding from the city and the state on a project-by-project basis up to a certain amount. We are looking to get block grants from the state and the city that will allow us to have more flexibility in the way we spend the money. With that leverage, with the block grant, we can leverage those dollars and get 10 to 15 times more, and allow us to do over $1 billion worth of work, so that within 10 years we will have a completely modernized school system. And that's what we're really pushing for. Last year, the state, they weren't exactly in favor of it, but what they did was they created a summer study committee. Yesterday we had our first meeting. And so there is a lot of work that we have to do, but we think by working with the state, by working with the treasurer, we will be able to get that done, present a report that will be favorable, and then the city will follow suit, and then we will be off and running. Some of you may know that last night the bottle tax, which was proposed by the mayor as a way of increasing some of the contribution from the city to the school system, that was approved. That money will start rolling in. I think in 2013, we probably won't really see it I'm sorry, 2014. Probably won't see it until 2015. But by then, there's a lot that we will have accomplished, we believe, through the state and through the city. Setting up an independent organization which will allow us to float bonds and get this work done. So it's a very ambitious program. We have great partners with the ACLU and with the Sustainable Schools Committee. So we thank you for all your efforts. We hope that everybody jumps on board. Up until 4 years ago, probably over a 30-year period, there was a continuous decrease of about 10% each year of students leaving the system. I believe in 1960, we had 190,000 students in the system. So a lot of that is obviously people moving out of the city. But like I said, up until about 4 years ago, because the state planning department's numbers where we should be right now, we are significantly above that because 4 years ago, bleeding was stopped. And I think, each year we've had about 800 to 1,000 more students actually coming into the system. So we believe we're kind of on the uptick, and that's why this alternative financing, alternative funding is so extremely important, because we have had a tremendous increase in charters. We have more charters in Baltimore City than the entire state combined. We have, I believe, 33, and 2 were just approved last week at the board meeting. So it's growing fast. It's helping us to provide educational options throughout the city, whether it's charters, whether it's transformation schools, which are grades 6 to 12, the high schools, middle schools, pre-K to 8, pre-K to 5. So we have a wide range throughout the city of Baltimore. It's kind of helping us to retain people and hopefully continue to grow the numbers.
Thank you. That's helpful.
I would just like to say that, fortunately, we have support from Dr. Alonzo from the top with respect to sustainability and green initiatives. Actually, one of our transformation schools, which is the 6 to 12, is actually the green school, and that's their curriculum. In addition to the work that Allison and Andrea are doing in community engagement, Bronwyn, who is the coordinator, actually works for our director of design and construction. And one of the reasons I selected him is that he's LEED certified. And we wanted to move very aggressively in the area of green schools and upgrading what we're doing, because we knew we were going to have this big initiative that we were going to kick off. And of course, Blaine, who's head of building maintenance, is also very, very much into that. Because just prior to my leaving the city, we started an energy conservation program for Baltimore City. We formed the first energy group, I think, which Carol is a part of. Carol's one of the architects sitting over there. But we started that first, and then we got the school system to also buy into the same program. Now, at that time, their program wasn't as good as ours, and then I ended up having to take it over. But we had 4 ESCOs that came in, and we retrofitted all of the bathrooms in terms of conserving the potable water. We also put in lighting retrofits and every initiative with respect to boilers and chillers and trying to upgrade them from the 40, 50-year-old systems that we had that were constantly breaking down.
There's a joke. We have our address at where our house is 440. It's going to be about 110. We're going to have 200 people down from 1,500, and so it's really a dramatic difference in administration. All the costs that we're making in our budget, and we get onto that, I'm trying to on the sustainability. All the costs that we're making are cuts to the budget. We're trying to really do it outside of programmatic change cuts. We don't want to cut teachers. We're trying to really do everything we can to keep the resources in the classroom. So we have no authority to raise taxes, and that is one of, I think, we're the only district in the state of Pennsylvania with not having that ability. The other 500 or 499 school districts have the ability to, or they they can't meet their budget, they raise their millage or their taxes. We have to go to city council, we have to go to all of our funding sources. Our homeroom charter, the way the city is set up, is intentionally done that way. One thing, in 2002, we had a huge building program, $1.9 billion, and the initiative for the program was to create more choices in high school for students, to K-8, to expand K-8s, and to get rid of middle schools and have classroom modernization. Then we decided, we had another epiphany during this program, where we moved away from, we wanted to do reduced class sizes, so we did reduced class sizes. Then we did a facilities master plan and realized that we had 70,000 excess seats in our district. So we had felt a lot more than we really needed because we didn't have a facilities master plan. So we are getting out of these facilities because we have all this excess spaces. And really what it was is we need to it's really a planning issue. You know, there are certain regions that are overcrowded, so how do we do redistricting, how do we boundary to get out of this, because we have enough space, it's just not necessarily utilized in the right areas. As we've been going out to the communities, we looked at utilization. One of the things that we came up with was a formula that took the emphasis away so much from the building and also included the school performance. So we're looking at two different indexes to look at schools that we're going to make investments in. One is what is their capital need? It's called a facility condition index, is what we created, and then a school performance index. And those are the two factors that we're now weighing to see where we're going to put our investments. In the building program initiatives is that we created best practices, we created new standardization, and so we were able to incorporate energy efficient design in our standards. So it became commonplace. It wasn't, when we were building a new school, we had these already to give to our professionals. We, a few years ago, joined the pilot program for LEED for existing buildings because most of our stock of our buildings is existent, and that's really the operations and the maintenance of how do we make this, how do we adapt this to go forward to make it more energy efficient and a healthier environment for our students. We never have enough money to do everything that we need, and so we try to be resourceful and find other funding sources for our programs. And I was able to find on the internet, I literally went through anything in Pennsylvania that was related to energy, and I found this, called the organization, and was able to make an application within a week. We had a window of a week to do it, and we were lucky enough to receive this grant. So we essentially paid for the GA Thermal with a grant. So it's really helpful. And I think, as I said, it helped bring a mindset to not just capital, but to people, to our operations and maintenance folks, about thinking about how do we get to other systems.
This $1.9 billion capital program. There's no books. It's a 9 through 12 student school, and everyone gets a laptop when they come to the school. It hasn't maybe been as successful as they were hoping, and that could possibly be part of. There's been a bunch of principals, so hopefully once we get a little more stabilized with the administration of the building, it will be successful. But it was the first building to really push the envelope in terms of sustainability for the district, with underground cisterns to meet the Philadelphia Water Department requirement. That fuels all the core bathrooms, flushing toilets and urinals. It has the first vegetated roof in the district. It has solar panels on the roof, and as well as in some of the glazing in the panels. And it received LEED Gold certification under the new construction version 2.1 grading system. So this was a big accomplishment for the district to make ground up, about a $31 million project. Low velocity displacement ventilation system in all the classrooms, and all these buildings are heated and cooled completely. So we also did quite a bit with daylighting. We brought the windows up to 9'6" in all the classrooms. So it really made a big difference in getting natural light into the classrooms, not using as much energy. And we also have rooftop classroom spaces. That was the intention. I mean, we're here to talk about lessons learned too. So one of the issues is, we'll say that school has had some maybe student control problems, I think is the best way to say it. And it hasn't been able, those classrooms haven't been able to be used the way that they were intended by the district and by the design team. So that's hopefully something that we are working on so that students can get up there and kind of experience that. The 4th floor of the building, you can see these are the outside classrooms, and the idea was music, science, all of the K through 8 specialty subjects would be on that floor, so it would be kind of like learning labs with outdoor environments to get outside. So that's something we're working on. Aside from putting a cage, basically one of those cages like when you have a gym, kind of on the roof of a school, so basketballs don't go out. That would be the next alternative, really. Construction industry, you know how difficult it is from an operations standpoint to get to that level, even sometimes if you are a lead building, just because the operations of the building, things maybe aren't used as they were intended in terms of design. A lot of these schools that you'll see out here, they're over capacity. I mean, we talked about having 70,000 empty seats, but what happens is when a new school, I'm sure this happens in Baltimore, a new school comes into the neighborhood, somehow a lot of people automatically somehow have an address in that catchment area. So there's a lot of students that, I mean, they want to be in a new school. The parents or whoever, the children's guardian, they think that it's an improved environment for education, which I'd say it is compared to some of our schools. So a lot of schools are above capacity, which is an issue. This school, I'd say, if you want to add something, is unique because there's 400 students and we're kind of holding it back. Did you want to add?
I just want to add, one of the things from an educational standpoint is that this school made AYP its first year. It had never made AYP in its time. So environment does matter. It does. The principal, as Michael said, a lot of our schools, when we design them, the principal is not the same principal that was in the design. So that's why the standards are so important. You can stick to the standard and share that. But I just wanted to say that this school did make AYP. The principal was over the meetings really committed, and it was really a great thing to see because it really is the holistic picture. It was everything coming together and really just a great commitment.
And we really put into it very little in terms of hard cost dollars. So one of the pieces that we had to do was we brought the systems, and when I say systems, really controls, HVAC controls and lighting controls back up to where they were supposed to be performing. So we didn't upgrade anything per se, but things had fallen into disrepair over the roughly 13 years of the building's life. And we really ramped it up and we brought those back to how they should be performing. So the BAS was brought back, the lighting control system was brought back. We did some upgrades with plumbing fixtures to reduce water.
To EPA, I have a new position with this as the person working on green and healthy schools out of our Office of Children's Health. And the focus for green and healthy schools is a few-fold. One is that we have these green and healthy school guidelines. We're trying to work with the state government folks. I know somebody's here from the Department of Ed. They'll be our new partners in trying to get these draft guidelines organized, which would support you all at Baltimore because we're trying to get the state to do more comprehensive planning on green and healthy at the state level. So that should help the Baltimore level as well. We also have siting guidelines, where to site schools when you're building, and I know that's not happening so much on the East Coast, but that came out of a California initiative where they were siting schools next to freeways and kids were getting sick because of all the freeway traffic and bad air quality. So we have those, and Green Ribbon, which I will hold up a lovely card about, Green Ribbon. Who knows about Green Ribbon? Wonderful, you should all know about it, and you should all do it. So that I'm going to talk about coming up. So as an agency, why is EPA in this business? Because we believe that all children should be in green and healthy spaces, as you've heard about from the Delaware Valley or U.S. Green Building Council. You heard that from Diana and the local chapter here in Baltimore. We at the federal agency want to make sure that good, healthy environments are available for students and staff. We want you to all save money. We want your facilities to be improved, and of course, that will result in better student performance. So in my thinking about all of coming to talk to you all today, I was thinking about, We had phone conversations, and again, I'm here to talk to you about the broad. So what I did is I flagged a few programs, and I'm not going to go into great depth about them particularly, but I want you to know that there are already frameworks out there that talk about greening schools, both from the top down, so from the school district of Baltimore's administrative level, and also from the bottom up. Because you can't have a school district that has vision and excitement, and it doesn't trickle down to the schools on the ground. And you can't have a school on the ground with a great teacher, an involved PTA, and no support from the top. So somehow it all has to work together from the top down and the bottom up.
2005, when the initiative provided additional funding, and we made the district's capital program made a commitment. And I would tell you that one of the things that's important is that it is a district initiative, and I said that before, but I can't underscore how important that is, because once it becomes a part of your planning and integration, it really, the money is the factor, but you can continue to push to get certain programs and initiatives forward because you show their merit, as opposed to waiting for the funding. And I would tell you that making it a district initiative is really critical. When we set up the capital improvement plan, at every phase of the project, once the project's identified as the capital project, we created a team called the Philadelphia School Improvement Team. And it was both internal and external. The internal team was from every department within the school district. It would be your facilities, it would have been our educators, it would be our food service, our transportation. Everyone was a part of that team, so that whatever their policies or standards for a building would be incorporated in the design, and they were part of the progress meetings at every phase of that. The finance people were involved, along with our capital finance people, to make sure we're within budget, within scope, that we're also incorporating the educational initiatives that the superintendent or educators are looking to find in our buildings or renovations.
Our work is rooted in the Bradford versus the State Board of Education, and a lot of people in Baltimore know what that's about, and it's mostly focused, it is solely focused on operating funds for the school district. It was a suit against the State Board of Education mandating or on the grounds that we believe that the school system was underfunded, so that lawsuit addressed the operating budget. In 2002, the state adopted a law, Bridge to Excellence Act of 2002, which increased and changed the way funding was allocated at the state level. We didn't address the facilities work in our lawsuit, and we're going at this at an advocacy level. That's our approach. We wrote a whole report on the conditions of school facilities and the impact. It compiles research on what the impact is of deficient school buildings, are on students and communities. I have some copies of this here if you're interested. So we used the report to shop around with a couple of legislators and the mayor. The school system was fully on board to see what we can do about this. We built a coalition called Transform Baltimore, Build Schools, Build Neighborhoods, because we think it's important to build schools, and the neighborhood is also a part of this. It's a planning thing. People don't want to move into the neighborhood or stay in the neighborhood if the education program is not good, and if the school building itself is falling apart. So we think that it's important to stabilize communities as well. The mayor did respond. We did build a pretty large grassroots movement around this and had some actions and activities, and the mayor came out with the bottle tax, and we had Mary Pat Clark and the other council members really leading the charge to get it passed. And as Keith said, it passed last night. This is a small piece of the funding puzzle that we need to put together. The state block grant, which Keith mentioned, is based on the Greenville model. They renovated all their schools in 6 years, all 70 of their schools in 6 years, or built new. Half of them were built new. We're interested in something like that happening in Baltimore City, and that's what the block grant at the state level intends to do. It's being studied now. Dr. Lever has put together a team with state officials, city school system, city administrators, and fortunately invited us to play a role. So we're hoping that that report comes out in the strongest way possible so that we can get some movement at the state level. We think that this is really going to start putting the pieces together so that Keith and his team aren't going out there doing patchwork and putting band-aids on things, and instead getting ahead of the game and really building great schools. So basically, my main message is, we need to figure this out, and we need to pressure the mayor. I'm going to turn that back around a little bit. The mayor has stepped out and did this bottle tax, but she's the leader of the city, and the state's not going to move unless this is a priority for her. And for the city administration, the city council, now that they're invested and have passed the tax on this issue, we think that they can step up and do more work at the state level, and so that we can work in collaboration. And we definitely need to talk to the right people at the state level to get the block grant.
Introduced this bottle bill, and of course everybody hates it a lot. And I keep telling them if it's 10% juice or more, it doesn't count. It's all right. And bottled water, turn on the faucet, get a life. But basically, it took a lot. It took a lot, and we did it. We got what everybody called, guys especially, skin in the game. So basically, we had to step up at the front of this long procession that involves now steps at the state level and then back again to the city, because we've got a block grant. Hi Tom Stozer. Our city's capital contribution to schools every year. By the way, I think we've all acknowledged Tom Stozer. Tom is head of planning, therefore head of the capital budget, and a great person and part of this great team. So we're out there now saying that the city council, we see how to get the first billion, okay? And that's a lot, but now we can see how to do it. And then we'll go from there. There's an old thing you see on dishcloths and aprons, I heard, that says, the harder I work, the behinder I get. You've seen this? That's really what's happened to us in the schools, that the more we worked, the less we made progress, because we were working kind of at odds with ourselves or not at all. And so, that's changed, and we're glad, and Diane, thank you for this opportunity. And
you alluded to families choosing the schools that were renovated, and all of a sudden an enrollment burst, and that happened at Digital Harbor High School. It was a $50 million renovation in the earlier part of this decade. Southern High School before, it was losing enrollment, failing grades, continued to fall. And when they renovated the school, the city school system, it became the most popular school among students. It's Digital Harbor, high tech, modern computers and studio and science labs and such. I want to know a little more about maybe if you guys have any actual data about what this does to increase enrollment in schools. Also, are you seeing that middle class families that would otherwise not choose an urban environment or school because of the perception, or maybe because it's really bad, that these new schools are helping to integrate schools, as that's an indicator for improving education?
Speaking from professionally, but I also live in the city with a child. I don't think it's necessarily shifted where you'd want to send your kid to school. I think that really depends on the neighborhood, the zip code, to be honest with you. Where there may be, I think it really depends on the parental involvement in that zip code and in those catchment neighborhood schools versus the
area, because it's got the right principal, it's got the right student body mix. Those professional parents that are living in Center City, Philadelphia, and walking to their jobs at law firms and accounting offices or whatever, that's where they want their kids to go to public school, irrespective of the fact that it's a 108-year-old building that probably doesn't have the great ventilation systems and fancy bells and whistles, that in itself is not enough in Philadelphia to get people to move to North Philadelphia, West Philadelphia.
Not new schools, no. I mean,
Not the
they'll
physical.
advertise when they're listing properties now in the city, what catchment district you're in.
We're looking to create a sustainable plan district-wide. We have a lot of examples of energy efficiency, and we've been successful individually at projects, but we've worked really hard to keep it moving as a district. I would say, identify as a team, one area you want to go first. Is it going to be, what's your sustainable concept? What's your first goal?